Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie begins in 1962, France is in chaos. Algeria is awarded independence by President Charles de Gaulle, which infuriates many French people. Many of them, especially army zealots and radicals, create an organization, OISH, Organisation Armée Secrète, and one section is commanded by Jean-Marie Bastien-Thierry. They plan to murder de Gaulle and set up shop along the route that de Gaulle's motorcade would be using to the airport. When the procession passes, they begin firing with automatic weapons on the presidential automobile. A number of bullets splinter and penetrate the car, but none of them hit de Gaulle or anybody else inside. 6 months later, Bastien-Thierry and the other conspirators are apprehended. The following morning, Thierry's counsel requests a stay of execution. But it is denied, and he is shot by firing squad the following morning. Colonel Marc Rodin, Manager Cassin, and Treasurer Montclair take stock from hiding in a remote chalet in Austria, and realize they cannot make any moves, because they will be constantly watched and identified. The OISH is planted with snitches who will watch every member's move, and each member's complete details have been archived. Rodin understands they need a foreigner who is unknown in France. 3 months later, Rodin finds an ideal person, an Englishman with a brief but flawless track record. He invites him to Vienna for an interview with the 3 heads of the OISH. The Englishman, who goes by the code name Jackal, is astute, enigmatic and cold-blooded. He recognizes their need for an outsider to murder de Gaulle. Given previous unsuccessful attempts and the OISH's slew of spies, he accepts the assignment but demands $500,000. Since anybody who performs anything like this would never be allowed to work again, he expects full confidentiality and anonymity, and insists that only the 4 of them know about the endeavor. Rodin's bodyguard and adjutant, Victor Wolinski, watches his departure to the OISH chiefs. The Jackal starts his preparations by doing thorough research on his target, obtaining 2 phony passports, traveling to Paris to find a suitable shooting spot, and contacting 2 persons in Belgium. The first is an armorer, who he contracts to make a unique gun, and the second is a forger, from whom he needs specific French paperwork. Later, the Jackal obtains an OISH contact called Valmy, who will keep him updated on any developments concerning the president. Around the same period, the OISH sends Denise, a female spy, to bed with a high-ranking French official for classified government information. The Jackal returns to pick up his goods 2 weeks after seeing the armorer and forger. He is pleased with the gun the armorer has produced, and the rifle experiment goes smoothly. Nevertheless, the forger attempts to blackmail him over his documents, and the Jackal breaks his neck. With all of his preparations in place, he departs for France as Paul Oliver Duggan. To pay the Jackal, OISH leaders direct their network to loot Paris banks. Techniques used vary from late-night burglaries to daytime ambushes against armored vehicles. The French intelligence division notices the new crime wave, and although many of the robbers are apprehended, they are hired thugs who only know they've been told to carry out these crimes on behalf of the OISH. When the Action Service learns that Rodin and his companions have abruptly retreated to the Hotel Garibaldi in Rome, which is owned by an OISH sympathizer, their suspicions deepen. According to monitoring personnel in the vicinity, Rodin and company are impenetrable. They dwell alone on the top level of the hotel, while their 8 bodyguards live on the floor below, emphasizing the men's dread of being abducted. So far, Wolinski is their sole point of contact with the outside world, making twice daily journeys to the post office to write and receive letters. After 5 weeks, the Action Service decides to detain Wolinski for interrogation. They kidnap him when he's strolling to the post office to get his mail, throw him into the back of a truck, and take him to an airstrip, where he's flown to Paris in a little propeller aircraft. They question and torture him to death, but all they find out is that a blonde murderer, dubbed Jackal, paid a visit to his bosses. This is enough for the Action Service head to believe that the OISH is using a contract killer, as part of a scheme to murder de Gaulle. The French Interior Minister requests an interview with de Gaulle, but his request for confidentiality is denied. De Gaulle is a proud man who refuses to hide or conceal himself. Instead, the Interior Minister forms a secret committee to deal with the Jackal, which comprises high-ranking officials like Police Commissioner Berthier and Colonel St. Clair. Berthier claims that since the Jackal is unknown even to his own employers, no one knows where to look for him. The key to discovering and stopping the Jackal is therefore, to prove his identification. He suggests his own deputy commissioner, Claude Lebel, the top investigator in France and the perfect candidate for the duty of tracking down the Jackal. Lebel, a kind but relentless police officer, is called before the council. He is granted access to every possible resource, but he is required to keep things hidden, which he does. Lebel enlists the assistance of his assistant, Karen, and the two go about calling the leaders of police agencies throughout the world. Meanwhile, St. Clair returns home and tells his mistress, Denise, all that has happened. She subsequently sneaks away and calls Valmy in London. Investigations are being led by Inspector Thomas, who has been granted specific permission by the Prime Minister to conduct a complete investigation into the Jackal, to ensure that he is not English and that he is stopped. The British cops come up with two ideas, which they pass on to Lebel. First, there was a questionable figure called Charles Caltrop, who was in the Dominican Republic around the time its dictator, Rafael Trujillo, was slain. Jackal is Chacal in French, constructed from the first three letters of each name. Caltrop is lacking. Second, and perhaps more concerning, a check of all passport applications indicates that one was submitted for one Paul Oliver Duggan, who died when he was 2 years old. Meanwhile, the Jackal learns from Valmy that his task has been blown, but chooses to go on nevertheless. He arrives in Grasse, and spends the night beguiling and seducing a fellow visitor, Baroness Colette de Montpellier. The hotel records are taken and checked the following morning, as per French conventions, and more quickly than normal. When Duggan's identity is discovered, Lebel quickly sends soldiers to the hotel and rushes over there personally. They find no trace of the Jackal, who has already departed the hotel, which Lebel finds peculiar, but they discover that the Baroness's bed has been shared by two people. Lebel interviews, but Baroness denies knowing the individual. Jackal's fast departure before the cops arrive is cut short when he crashes his automobile. He chooses to go to the Baroness's estate, where she accepts him. That night, she informs him that the cops are searching for him, but says she won't say anything if he tells her what he's up to. He strangles her in retaliation, and disguises himself as bespectacled Danish preacher Per Lundqvist, whose passport he had taken earlier at Heathrow Airport, and flees swiftly but silently. In the Baroness's automobile, he drives to Toul Station, and boards a train to Paris. The corpse of Baroness is discovered by the servants hours later. Lebel reports on the inability to apprehend the Jackal, and the death of Madame de Montpellier, noting that he could not have left without forewarning, and that he now has the identity of a Danish pastor, after tracing the automobile to the station and questioning the station officials. He also adds that the murder allows him to abandon concealment, and launch a public manhunt. A police unit is sent to the Paris station to apprehend the Jackal, but they arrive too late. Lebel sends police to search every hotel in Paris, but the Jackal avoids capture by visiting a Turkish bathhouse, and being picked up by a French guy. Lebel uses a phone tap to determine that Denise is the Oish agent, who has been informing the Jackal. He plays a tape of her phone conversation to the council, and St. Clair flees, later overdosing on sleeping pills. He'd tapped all the council members' phones, having been warned about the Jackal. Following that, he calculates that the Jackal will attack in 2 days, or on August 25, 1963, the anniversary of France's liberation from Nazi Germany. De Gaulle, being a World War II veteran, is certain to make a public appearance on that day, regardless of the danger, and the council disbands, resolving to make every effort to discover the Jackal before then. Meanwhile, Jackal murders the French guy after hearing of Per Lundqvist's arrest for murder. The minister wearily tells Lebel in the early hours of Liberation Day that they have been unable to locate the Jackal. All they can do is take the most stringent security steps. Nothing occurs during the day. Later, a gendarme lets the Jackal, disguised as an elderly one-legged French battle veteran, into his home after viewing his documents. The Jackal ditches his disguise, disassembles his crutch to build a gun, and waits for the president to award honors to former French resistance fighters. Lebel walks about searching for anything unusual or out of place, but he doesn't come across anything, until he encounters the gendarme around the time the president awards medals. He discovers that the police allowed a crutch-wielding cripple past, notices that the house mentioned had a window open on the top level, and hurries over there, telling the officer to follow him. The Jackal sights, takes his shot, and misses, because de Gaulle abruptly lowers his head to kiss the cheeks of a resistance fighter, as is French tradition. The Jackal reloads his gun for a second shot, but Lebel and the gendarme charge at him. He shoots the gendarme, but Lebel grabs the officer's submachine gun, and fires it into the Jackal. Charles Caltrop arrives at his apartment in London. The British authorities interrogate him, but find that he had nothing to do with the Jackal, and shut the case, thereby absolving themselves of any responsibility for the Jackal, since he was not only an Englishman, but also a Dane and a Frenchman. Superintendent Thomas mulls over who the Jackal was. A funeral that takes place in Paris. Lebel is the sole witness there, as the Jackal is interred in an unmarked grave. The end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. Turn on the notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out.